Hi there guys, my name is Stuart from Marshall Music, and today on Stu Chats we have someone different. We usually interview musicians, and the producers were saying like, no, you can't interview him, he isn't a musician, but he actually is, or was. He was a drummer, and his name is Dayne Marshall, and he's the owner of Marshall Music. And thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Stu.
You. Very
I finally
weird.
get to be on my own show.
Yeah, Dayne's show, me interviewing you, it's a bit weird.
No, it is your show. Let's be honest, it is your
Okay,
show.
Okay.
But it just bears the
Well, I
Marshall
like
Music
to think
name.
it's not my show, it's
The Marshall Music show.
well, and it's just the people we interview.
Yeah.
I just kind of like to stay out of it a bit and just let the people speak, you know. So yeah, great to have you. Thanks for giving up your time.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your drumming, your short.
My short
drumming
career in the drumming business. So yeah, when I was 18, I wanted to be a rock drummer, and my dad had an opportunity to move to England in a job offer, and so I went and I had lessons there. I was trying to be a drummer and taking all the lessons and that type of thing, and then I ended up getting a gig with a band called Heretic, and it was a British rock band,
Yeah.
and all the guys had long hair and leather jackets. And
Did you have long hair?
I didn't have the long hair. I had obviously a lot more hair than I've got at the moment, but yeah, my hair was sort of onto my collar, sort of thing, you know.
Yeah.
And
When was this?
this was 1981.
Okay.
And at that time, I had just got a job with Zildjian Cymbals as the artist relations manager or person for the UK. So Zildjian had given me this Ford Granada, which at the time was the state-of-the-art car.
Yeah, yeah.
So there I was, 21, driving this Ford Granada, a black Ford Granada with Zildjian painted on each side in white. But at the same time, I was in this band, and so we were doing the Polytechnics in the UK, and then the guys would arrange like a little mini tour where because we were London based, and we would go up to Leeds or Sheffield, those sort of places, and that's kind of what I was doing for probably 6 months. The first 6 months that I was working for Zildjian, I was also in the band, and then it got too much because these guys are doing these gigs up in the north of England, and I'd have to be back
Down south for business.
for
or
business,
whatever,
clocking into the office, and so eventually I had to time out on it, But
Okay.
it was cool, and.
Well, at least you got to see a bit of England.
Yeah, and I think my crowning glory of a gig was there was a band in England called Spider, and they were like the second generation Status Quo type band, that real guitar rock and roll sort of band, and we supported them.
Okay.
So that was cool because then it was a proper gig with all the lighting and the proper stage
And a crowd.
and a crowd, because otherwise we didn't have the crowd, So yeah, it was cool.
Okay. So you gave up the band, carried on working.
The other thing that happened at that stage, working for Zildjian, I was very fortunate to be working with the top drummers at the time for Zildjian. That was my gig, to look after them. So players like Steve Gadd, if he came to England, I would have to go and hook up with him. Make sure his cymbals were good and all that type of thing.
Yeah.
Simon Phillips lived in England, and I'd look after him. Brian Downey with Thin Lizzy, and Vinnie Colaiuta coming into town. These were the guys I was looking after.
Yeah, super cool.
And to be honest, when I saw up close them playing, because I'd put Simon Phillips on a clinic, so I'd sit there, 2 meters away from his kit, while he's tuning it or practicing what he was going to do for the clinic, and you're seeing that level of drumming. I I gave up. I was
Yeah.
like, I was never going to be remotely that good.
Yeah.
And probably if I had been better myself and seeing that, I might have maybe more aspired to it. But my level of drumming was so far behind where they were. And it was like, no. And so I kind of figured my business skills were probably more a dominant factor for me. And so with that Zildjian gig, that led to pretty much me owning Marshall Music.
Okay.
And
okay.
we'll talk a bit about
after
that.
Zildjian then?
So after
how long were you
Zildjian, I was with them for 2 years, and then I joined Sabian Cymbals,
Okay.
and I was with them for 5 years.
Also UK based?
UK, European based,
Okay.
and that was transcending not just artist relations, but I was also doing sales and marketing. And then
Who were some of the guys
so
you looked after at Sabian?
the biggest guy at Sabian was Phil Collins. So I was actually looking at a Live Aid YouTube clip in I think 85
when he was at his biggest.
When he was at his biggest, and the cymbals on that kit were Zildjian. And it was pretty much around that time that I then switched him to Sabian.
Okay.
And so it's very rare to see footage of Phil using Zildjian. I happened to watch it the other night on YouTube. So Phil was one of the biggest. And there were a lot of the English drummers at the time. My memory's going to fail me now, but there was a guy, Jeff Dunn, who became a personal friend of mine. He played with Virgil Sharkey, Terence Trent D'Arby.
Well, that was a hot gig.
Those were the hot gigs back then, And then we had, I can't even remember, but there was a stable load of drummers that I worked with. Gary Ferguson, who was the drummer with Gary Moore at the time. So.
And how long were you with Sabian then?
Sabian 5 years. I did some big clinics in London. I used a guy, Jerry Brown, who was obviously a big US Sabian artist, and we put Jerry Brown on with 2 UK drummers, Richard Bailey, who was with Incognito at the time, and Jeff Dunn, and we made a video of that. That was Sabian's first ever video that we did in England. So I ended up doing a further clinic just with Jeff Dunn and no, it was also the 3 of them, Jeff Dunn, Richard and Jerry, probably 2 years later, Jerry Brown. So we ended up doing 2 videos. And the old PAL VHS. But at the time, I mean, that, the video thing, it was only just really starting in those days,
And it was hot. It was big business, those video clinic instructional videos,
So after Sabian, I then
you went to America, didn't you?
Well, I then got a job with Latin Percussion, LP. And I started off in 1989 as the European sales director. And I also looked after the marketing side as well, the endorsee side. So we had some of the top percussionists in England. Thomas Diani, who we all know in this country, I gave him his LP deal in '89.
Really? Have you known him
London,
since then? Okay, wow, I didn't know that.
So he grew up in Denmark, and then he had gone to Cuba, then he came to London, and I gave him his deal. And
he's now Shakira's.
Well, he was with Shakira.
was with Shakira
and
for many years.
And there was Steve Sodolnik, who was with the Pet Shop Boys and all those bands. I had Gary Wallace using jam blocks and triggers, and obviously at the time he was Pink Floyd's music director. So anyway, I did a year in the UK as the UK European sales manager for LP, and then they moved me to the States. So 1990 I ended up living in the States.
New York.
In New Jersey. With a New York skyline view from my apartment. And I became global sales director for LP. And so I did a lot of traveling in the US. And towards the end of 1990, I I'd been communicating with Alan Vader, and he
Of
had
Vader
of
Percussion?
of Vader Percussion, and he had been always producing sticks as an OEM manufacturer for Vic Firth previously, and Pearl drumsticks. He had also produced all the Zildjian sticks for Zildjian. He had
Okay.
done all their R&D work. Anyway, he just was battling with these OEM suppliers, manufacturers, because they was messing him with pricing and that type of thing.
Yeah.
So I ended up persuading him to start his own brand. And I left LP and basically launched Vader Percussion in '91 at the
Okay.
NAMM show,
Okay.
Alan and I. And then that was January '91, and then March '91 I launched it in Europe at the Frankfurt Fair. And Alan was too scared to come because the Gulf War was on,
Okay.
and Bush at the time had put out a travel alert of Americans be careful, and
Yeah.
so a lot of Americans said, well, they're not going to travel to Frankfurt. And so that particular year, Frankfurt was a little
pretty
bit
quiet.
quieter. But so we launched Vader in '91, and at the time, I said to Alan, I've been out of the South Africa for 11 years, and I wanted to come back. There was all the change happening here with Mandela being released, and I said, I'm going to go back to South Africa, and I'll do the export for Vader from South Africa. And the target market was Europe, and being on the same time zone as Europe, it made sense.
Yeah.
When I got back here, my dad, the late John Marshall, he already had Marshall Music started. He started
About 5 years previously.
'86 he started it. And it was a small company mainly doing government tenders for military bands and that
Okay.
type of thing. And that's when I
Focusing on percussion and
brass and woodwind.
brass, yeah.
Yeah. And so when I came back in '91, his then partner, John Rotenbach, who's still alive and a fabulous character, a wonderful double bass player, which
Yes, yeah.
you would have
Yeah.
So-
Well, he's one of the greatest. Yeah.
in this country,
Yeah.
yeah. And so he wanted to actually retire from the business. So I ended up buying his shares and becoming a 50-50 partner with my dad in Marshall Music.
Okay.
And that's how I got to be part of Marshall Music.
Okay.
You know?
Okay. And then, I mean, obviously from then you obviously got into expanding. You kind of got your dad to think a bit bigger and
Yeah,
expand into
so
more-
my
all the
experience, yeah. So with that year that I lived in the US, I'd traveled to a lot of the Guitar Center stores, Sam Ash stores, and in Europe there was a store it's still around, called Music Productif, and these were these superstores, So I had this vision of doing that in this country, being the first to really do a big store.
yeah.
And I also realized that with the change that was happening, that government business wasn't going to be maybe there for forever. And so I said to my dad, look, we need to go more into the rock and roll side. And he agreed, and so that's what we did. So when I started with him in '91, we were in Johannesburg in an office, 4th floor, and in '96 we opened up.
And how much staff? Who were the staff back then? And tell
So
us.
we had the guy that we had was Rusty Stanley,
Yeah.
who's is a legend in the industry, and
He still works for Music Connection. Yeah.
he still works there, and it was pretty much him. And then we had Garth McLeod at a certain point, and then he left because Sugar Drive were going pro. So then it was just Rusty and Tebogo, who works for me at Music Power.
Who's still with you? How many?
Still
I mean,
with me.
that's 25 years.
91.
What are we saying? 27, 28 years
Yeah,
he's been
yeah,
with you.
yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
And so this building that we are doing this video in, the Woodmead store, This was completed in 96,
Okay.
and late 96, and so we opened Marshall Music here late 96.
Yeah. And then it was just
We just had the one
the other-
unit.
now it's
So for everyone that's been here, you'll know we kind of got two sections at the top. So when we started, we were where the present day keyboard section is. That was the entire store,
yeah.
and then Rusty was the manager here, myself, and we had Dave Callahan here for a while.
Yeah.
Michael van Gass,
Tony, what's his
Tony,
name?
the
drummer.
yeah. So that was kind of how we started, and I remember at the time we were getting into guitars, and Rusty said, we've got to get some Fender in. And it was like the biggest thing. We had one USA Strat, two Mexican Strats, and three Squires. So we had 6 Fender products. And
Yeah.
we thought we were the bee's knees, you know. And then at the time, Melodies in the Germiston and Boksburg side, they were doing, believe it or not, they were doing Gibson. You know, these furniture people.
Yeah, it was bizarre, eh?
And they couldn't sell them because that wasn't their market, you
Yeah.
know. So you'd go to Melodies and half the store was this furniture and Gibson guitars. So at the time, Yuri, who used to own Music Connection, him and I would go there and we would buy 20 Gibsons each.
Yeah.
And we'd go in their warehouse and just choose the best, you know.
Yeah.
And then eventually they pretty much closed down. Melodies, it
Yeah.
closed down,
They had a closing. Apparently, they laid the guitars out on the pavement
something like
for
that.
you to go and
Just
take
crazy.
them away.
Anyway, so at that stage, I approached Gibson and I said, you know, could I be your distributor? And we went through the process, and around 2000, we became the Gibson distributor. And then obviously by that stage, this was 3 years in to us being here, we had a lot more Fender than the 6 that we had started with, you know.
Yeah.
So we ended up with a Fender wall, a Gibson wall, you know,
Yeah.
Epiphones,
Yeah.
and then, so we were now pretty much, you know, the guys to go to
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
selection.
Yeah.
And also at that stage we had grown the store to be now 3 times what we had started with, you know. So
When did you take out this whole new section of the shop? And
So
when
what
did that
happened
happen?
at that stage, when I was given the Gibson distribution, I formed a new company just to handle Gibson, and I called it Active Music. It was a distribution company, and we needed a home for it. So the present day, this section, which is the guitar section, this was the Active warehouse,
Oh, okay.
and we didn't have that hole in the wall, so there were 2 entrances.
Okay.
So this section was Active, and then downstairs I had my other distribution company, Music Power, was operating from there. So basically I had both distribution companies and Marshall Music all together.
Yeah.
And then Active outgrew this unit, and we then took a warehouse up in Kyalami.
Yeah.
And then that's when I said, well, let's knock a hole through the wall and turn this into a guitar section.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the first of its kind in this country.
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
You had
Yeah.
wall-to-wall Fenders, Gibsons, and Taylors, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and so it was, that was exciting times back in 2000. That was.
And
you know.
then all the other stores. When did you got shops all over the country? When did those all pop up?
So that kind of happened around 2005. We weren't happy with the dealers in Cape Town not really supporting us on Gibson, and so Yuri and I, we were, you know, business partners in Active. We decided to open a store in Cape Town, and that became basically it started out Music Connection Cape and then became a Marshall Music Cape. And then when I sold out 3 years ago, it became a Mars Music, you know. But that's how that whole thing in the Cape Town started. The West Rand, we had a situation where Matt, who owned Matt's Music, was killed, and Vanessa, his wife, approached me to help her, and so we did. And it was a case of, you know, we're not going to call it Matt's Music anymore, we'll make it a Marshall Music. And then we did one in the south, and that's how we were rolling. And then we ended up, I had people approach me in KZN, so I ended up partnering with a guy, Paul, in Maritzburg. We created Marshall Music Midlands, and then we opened up in Hillcrest as well, and then eventually in Umhlanga. So we ended up pretty much in the three biggest business areas, you know, KZN, Western Cape, and Gauteng.
Yeah, cool.
And then the final one was the Pretoria store, which used to be Music Boys.
Yeah, that's right.
And they went out of business, and they asked me to buy their stock, what was left. And I did, and then it was like, okay, so let's carry on trading and just change the name. So that's how that happened. And that brings us up till today.
And you just opened, tell us about the new shop.
So in
Cape Town.
Tableview, Roland, my partner, he set that store up 2 years ago, and he had a franchise deal with Mars Music, and but now he's resigned from them, and it's now become a Marshall Music.
Cool.
So the Mars sign came down 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And the Marshall signs are up. Our main sign is probably only going to be up the end of the month. Okay. But we have got signage in, you know, saying Marshall Music. So it's up on the website.
Okay, cool.
So we have got a Marshall Music there.
Cool. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
And going forward, what are your feelings about the future of the music industry? What are your feelings on the future of Marshall Music?
So that's an interesting question, and it's one that I think any retailer looks at very hard, you know, because the online presence globally is eating away at brick and mortar. So Marshall Music, as you know, we've invested heavily in the online stage, and that's become 10% of our business in the last year. So I see that part of the business growing and growing and growing. I see the survival of a brick and mortar store will depend on the value added benefits that the store can offer. And so with Marshall Music Woodmead,
that an online shop can't.
That an online shop can't. So with Marshall Woodmead, we have JD Custom operating out of Woodmead, and he brings a huge amount of traffic, foot traffic coming through the door. So these are people now that are coming into the store, and obviously it's up to us to then interest them to also look around and potentially become a customer, you know. But that's a value add. We've got Drum Lab operating downstairs with drum lessons. And then the selection that we have available at Woodmead is almost an outing out for any family, any muso. It's like, let's go see what Marshall Music has. Because there's always going to be those special instruments, the 100,000 Rand Les Pauls.
Well, we got 160,000 Rand Les Paul in today.
So it's now 160,000 Rand. And the tailors that are, you know, up at that level. It's so, if somebody is kind of bored on a weekend and they like, let's go look at something really good, Marshall Music has that wow factor,
which no online store can
provide
with or match.
You know, we've just got to make sure that experience when the customer comes in, that he doesn't just look at it and then go away and buy it online.
Yeah.
That he does, that a certain percent of those people do end up buying it in store, you know.
Yeah.
And I think the expertise that we have, you know, with the personnel, you in the guitar department and the guys in each department, we've got a lot of expertise.
Yeah, and and we all specialize.
All specialize.
We're not just jack of all trades. We all focus on.
I mean, at Woodmead, it's not uncommon to see Jay from Mikasa walk in, and he's querying things or buying things, or Khan from Parlotones, or Denham Harding, or Craig from Watershed, or Art Matthews. These people come in and they need to maybe gain information, and we have experts in each field that can give that expertise, which you can't get off an online experience, you know. So it's the future's going to be, from a retail point of view, you've really got to have your A game on, and try be as competitive as possible with online, you know. But I think at Marshall Music we are known for that store to have that very wide range of gear. Pro end gear.
They can come in and find almost anything.
Almost anything, you know, from a guitar point of view, your Strymon pedals or your Wamplers, whatever. We've got it, you know, and top end guitars and drums. We've got all the spares. You know, you're missing a wing nut or a tension rod or a hoop or whatever.
Well, that's one thing I've learned from you, is that no sale is too small. It's about, if you watch those little details, that little 10 rand wing nut sale, the guy will come back
and treat, you know. We also fortunate that in the music industry, it's a bit like that biker mentality. People do like to be in a community and come and talk and find out things, and just like you're a guitarist and you're part of this guitar family. Super important. People want that sense of community. That, you know, and drummers like it. I think it's mainly in the guitar and drum section that happens.
Well, bass players have a great community as well. You know, keyboard players not so much.
No, don't know why, but
violin players no.
But I think that's mainly because it's mainly a student-based thing, and the kids are young and that type of thing.
But
anyway,
definitely drummers and bass players, they have a great sense of like family. It's cool.
So I mean, we
which you are very responsible for, especially in the drum community. Putting on all those clinics over the years, and
so we've tried to invest in the industry. In fact, last year we brought 2 artists out, Virgil Donati and Aaron Spears, you know, in both wonderful clinics, you know. So we just got a plan now. Who's next, you know?
Get Vinny.
Try get Vinny. Try bring maybe Steve Smith back or whatever. We'll see. We won't reveal too much right now, you know.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Dayne. Thanks for giving up your time, and I'll see you in the store tomorrow.
Tomorrow, don't be late.
I won't be late.
Okay.
Promise.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. That's all for now. Cheers.